Welcome to the Unity Guides Expert Interviews series. My name is Clayton Stenson, and I'll be your host today. This series is brought to you by Unity Guides Incorporated, where we help develop Unity within companies running on the entrepreneurial operating system. We do this through fractional integrator services and relationship coaching for the visionary and integrator. And the reason I started this interview series is that I've met some pretty amazing people in recent years and had some great conversations that have been really valuable to me. So I thought I should share those conversations to add value to other people as well. And today's guest is Shasta Mareno. Shasta is an EOS implementer in South Dakota. Welcome, Shasta.
Thank you, Clayton. I'm pleased to be here with you.
Awesome. So today we're going to learn a little bit about your story. So it's going to be a little different than some of the other ones that we've done. We're just going to talk about your story and how you discovered EOS, why you chose it, and then why you became an implementer down the road a little bit. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about your story to begin with?
Sure, happy to. So growing up in the Black Hills of South Dakota, I came here from California with my parents when I was 3. And my dad was a serial entrepreneur coming to the Black Hills to start a trucking company. And my parents' marriage was a casualty of that company, unfortunately. But it meant that I had 4 parents to raise me and a stepbrother and a stepsister. So in a family of 7, they all had their own businesses, independent from one another. So I grew up understanding firsthand what a business does to a family when it's the one in control. And so when I graduated, quite frankly, I wanted nothing to do with that lifestyle.
Wow.
So I was the black sheep. I was the only one in 7 that went to work for someone else. Still ended up getting my education, my business education at the School of Hard Knocks, just like my family did. But it let me do a lot of different things in business. So I have a lot of that in leadership, training and development, human resources, operations, both technical and non-technical roles. And I eventually got the opportunity to start helping teams plan their strategy and then execute that strategy. And I learned different systems on how to do that. But the first company that I helped all the way through, so soup to nuts, 100% implementation in a global company, we had set a really aggressive growth goal for revenue. And it took us just over 2 years, but we hit that. And I fell in love with those days. Those were my most fun days, helping those teams just stay disciplined and execute their vision. And so in a total God way, when it came time to come back home to the Black Hills, I had to do some soul searching and a lot of praying to see what it was that I wanted to do full time. Spent some time homeschooling my son, and then wanted to go back into work just solely helping teams do that. But I didn't want to continue getting on a plane every other week and going across the Atlantic Ocean every quarter. I wanted to be with my family, and I wanted to help business owners in the Black Hills. South Dakota is the #1 state nationwide with, by percentage, having family-owned businesses. Really? So there's a lot of them here. Yeah, I just learned that just a couple weeks ago. I learned that statistic. So
Interesting.
I didn't know that at the time, but I knew that there were a lot of business owners still, and my family still own businesses here. And again, like I said, in total God moment, I wasn't looking for EOS, didn't know it existed, but I did know that the big systems that I was used to using were overkill for the kind of small family businesses that I wanted to help. Yeah. And a colleague of mine who had been running his business on EOS is the one who introduced me to it. So once I found out that there was a system, proven system, created for exactly the kind of people that I wanted to help, I jumped in both feet, and praise God, not one day's felt like work in the session room since.
That's awesome. So take us back a little bit to your childhood, like you said, that the marriage, and I just want to say I love how positive you were, that the marriage was a casualty, but then I ended up with 4 parents, right? So to help raise me, that's awesome.
Or entrepreneurs.
The positive spin you put on it. But what was it like as a child with parents who ran a business? And I grew up in a farming family, so I sort of a business it is, but it's different. Um, what was that like? Like what because you said you didn't want to follow in those footsteps. So what was it like for you when you were a kid? What did you see?
I saw three predominantly different issues depending on the parent and their business. So for my dad and my stepmom, it was much more an issue of time. So um, my dad had his schedule dictated by what the business needed. So his availability, while he was very present mentally and wanted to be, just physically unable to be there as much as he wanted to be when the business called and needed his time.
Hmm.
Um, for my stepmom, same thing related to time, but it was more because of lack of process. She was single threaded in a lot of the things that her company had to do to close year end books. She was in the property management business. And so we literally did not see her from January until sometime in May. I mean, she would be working 15, 16-hour days, sometimes more, sometimes sleeping at her office. So it was that issue on that side. And then on my mom's side of the family, it was much more um, not having enough clarity and business plan to ensure that she was compensated appropriately. So she had a home daycare system, and she grew and retracted in different sizes. So she would do a small in-home daycare, 6 kids, and then all the way up to purchasing, or I'm sorry, leasing another location and doing a 24-hour daycare where she had employees. And
Well,
so just watching that control her and just not being able to create enough profit to
yeah. And
make
then
it worthwhile.
was your stepdad also running a business then too?
Um, he was his entrepreneurial business was the ranch that they started. So
Oh,
they
okay.
were
More
very
simple
much dictated by ag there.
than it's the weather.
Right. Probably much closer to what you
What I
experienced.
experienced. Yeah, a lot of conversations about the weather, and like 6 o'clock was news, and no one talked until the weather was done.
Yes.
Before you had an iPhone, you could just check the weather whenever you wanted. Uh,
Right.
so that's challenging. Like I hear a lot of people saying the same things. The compensated appropriately. I've had a lot of situations where I'm sitting with people and I'm coaching them, and it's like, yeah, how much do you pay yourself? And it's like, well, you know, 50,000 or whatever's left over, or like it can be pretty painful as a business owner sometimes, because you got to make payroll or people will quit. So what do you cut? Yourself, your own pay, right? And
Yep.
but that'll bite you in the butt in the long run. You can't sell a business where you don't pay the owner. Right.
Very true. Nobody wants to take that on.
I actually was looking at buying a business recently, and I signed the non-disclosure, and I looked through the information, and I said, where's the pay? Like it was a storage business. And I said, there's no labor cost in here. Like, like, do you have employees or what? It's like, no, we don't pay ourselves. I'm like, okay, conversation over.
My husband just shared with us. It's funny that you say storage. My husband just shared with me a little fact that three most um, uh, level set businesses or predictable businesses with longevity: um, storage,
Yeah.
parking, and waste management.
Hmm. Yeah. Interesting. And then the other one you said time, right? And that one I could relate with my dad ran the farm, and but also worked at a coal mine, right? So when I was up until age 10, when he stopped working at the coal mine, I never saw him, right? Like I never saw him, and if I did see him, he was cranky. And I think back then I didn't understand, and thought maybe it was me or something I did, right? But when you get older, you recognize that, okay, well, it wasn't anything I did. Like, I'd be cranky too, right? If I was doing two full-time jobs.
Absolutely.
So, so then that was like for you, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but for you, like you got to the end of, school and you were like, I don't want anything to do with it if that's what it's like, essentially. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So I had seen my parents' businesses by that time. So that's why I decided to uh, first go off to college. I thought I wanted to be a teacher, and 1 year into that, I thought I'm not sure I want to spend 4 years in school. So I did a pivot into healthcare and became a radiology technologist, and did that for about 5 years until became a parent. And once
Mm,
I had a girl, it was just too tough to see that trauma. So that's where I made the shift then into healthcare software. And that's
yeah.
really where I started to,
Yeah.
to learn my business
Mhm.
aspect. But in those um, early school years, so my stepbrother was a year older than me and my stepsister 6 months younger. So we had three graduates in subsequent years.
Right.
And so early there in my business career, my brother and my sister were figuring out what they wanted to do, and they both started their own business. And then my brother is quintessential visionary entrepreneur, started multiple businesses. And he learned some tough lessons too, and so did my sister.
Mhm.
The probably for my sister, I'd say the biggest obstacle I usually heard her talk about was the people aspect, just what it takes to lead, manage, to hold people accountable, but then to also have the right people in the right seats.
Mhm.
It's probably her biggest challenge.
Yeah.
And for my brother, it was all different industries that he started businesses in. So it was all that startup, um, think tank entrepreneurial challenge that eventually he would get to a point and figure out how to scale it. And he had some successful exits and some not so
Mhm.
successful ones, and implications to him trying to juggle all that and be a husband and a father and
Mhm.
all that comes with.
Do your parents still have their businesses? Were they successful?
No, all four of my parents are retired.
Yeah. Did they sell them successfully? Yeah.
Um, Two sold successfully and two shut down,
Okay.
um, and just ceased to exist.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So then what appealed to you about EOS, and how do you see it solving the problems that you saw when you were a kid growing up?
So, well, all issues come down to the six key components, right? I haven't found an issue yet, and haven't seen one issue yet that any of my clients have had and gotten to the root that wasn't in one of those six key components. But
Mhm.
um, in knowing other systems and trying to utilize those when I began helping smaller teams, um, I I just didn't see the same level of success that I had experienced with larger business, more corporate businesses where you've got clear functions and teams, and you've got 10, 12 people in the same role or in the same seat type, and you've got some redundancy there.
Mhm.
Those larger systems tend to operate well when that is the case. But when you've got one person sitting in four seats, not so much then. So
Mhm.
um, early on, that's really what appealed to me about EOS is that it was created, Gino created it to be light enough that people could still pivot. They could still, I think Mike Payton, he says zig and zag on a dime is how he kind of puts it. But
Mhm.
it has to have that level of flexibility because entrepreneurial small businesses need that flexibility. They don't operate like big
Mhm.
corporations. So
Mhm.
it goes to show that a system specifically made for their unique needs is much more effective.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's really what appealed to me
Yeah.
about EOS.
Yeah, I know that's one thing that I remember when I first became integrator, or having the conversation with my visionary. I said, like, are you willing to commit 50% of my salary to being an integrator? right? Like speaking to the multiple hats thing, right? Because I said, if you're not, we can't do this. Like it's not something I can do off the side of my desk, right? It's got to be, I need, at least half of my time. But you're right. Like that was a company of 20 people. Sometimes I had to estimate, sometimes I had to be a project manager, but I'm also integrator, and we saw great fruit from that. So it eventually became, 75% and eventually 100% of my role, because it was bearing fruit. But yeah, it has to be flexible with these smaller companies for sure.
Yeah.
And then what do you think? What else do you think? Like, so we talked about, um, so that was more about flexibility. So what about, let's talk specifically about some of the issues you mentioned. So time, let's say, how do you feel like EOS solves the time problem for the owner? And it's not all about the owner, like it's about everybody, but let's talk about the owner to begin with.
So I saw, being the daughter, I saw the issue being time, but didn't know the business well enough to understand root cause. Now, come full
Mm.
circle, I think really the root cause was just lack of clarity, or even a lack of understanding that there's another way.
Mhm.
You really
Yeah.
could plan.
Yeah, and I would even say that the issue is actually not time. That's the symptom. The
Hmm.
symptom is time. The issue is something else. So, but yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So, and I don't know if it was, maybe I'm dating myself now, right? Because we're talking late 70s at this point in time, maybe early 80s. But I did back then. So I had boomer parents, and that's just the way it was done, right? You rolled up your sleeves, you went to work. It might be 10 hours, might be 12 hours, but
Suck it
they
up.
celebrated the hard work and that work ethic. And so I don't think there was a need to challenge the way of thinking as much then, related to saying it is okay to have other passions, and you can have time for other passions, and it is okay to have put your family first, and ensure that you're doing that. I think that's something that we've come to appreciate as we've all aged.
Hmm.
To appreciate the ability to slow down.
Yeah,
um, so because there wasn't the drive to find a different way to do business, I don't think that there was the aha for them that you really could set up a plan and have the leaders that you rely on help you come up with that plan. It doesn't have to be a top-down dictated
right.
approach.
Command and control
Um,
style.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think it probably had to do somewhat with mindset, um, but then also just not even knowing there could be a
That
different
there was
way.
a different way, a better way. Yeah. Yeah, I see a lot with small companies where it's, the owner is the bottleneck, and that transition from being, the be all and end all and the center of everything to a leadership team led model. That's a tough one, because you got to let go, right? And you have to empower it. And it's a different skill set than the first part of the journey.
It is,
And
and
is
that's the
that,
biggest reason. EOS isn't for everybody.
yeah,
If there's still leaders that struggle with making that mindset shift, EOS is not going to feel warm
no,
and fuzzy to them.
no, this is very much
Warm and
designed
fuzzy.
for that transition into
Yeah.
a leadership team led company. And that where your parents were at? Was that kind of that uncomfortable level of transition between those two models, or not? Just curious. Or did you know?
No, I don't. So, I didn't know then. It,
Hmm.
it has to be, reflection. I don't think that my so I'm really talking more of my dad and my stepmom's companies, because those are the ones that really had multiple employees and leaders, and
Hmm.
fit the model more like our target market.
Hmm.
um, I don't think that they were command and control so much as they were, um, that's just how it was done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't think that they had.
It was different back then.
Yeah, yeah. Now, so full circle, the first 90-minute meeting I did was for my dad and my stepmom after they had exited
Really?
their businesses,
You
just to say,
practice on
okay,
them.
so yeah, does this resonate? Would have this resonated back then? And of course, I brought in my brother and my stepbrother and my stepsister, and um, they all they all had the same message. So yeah, where were you 30 years ago? Sure could have used that then.
So it resonated. That's good.
Yeah, it did. It did.
Yeah, that's good. Awesome. So then tell us a little more about the journey. So you discovered EOS, you like the simplicity of it. So then what made you want to make the step to be an implementer?
So well, I had already fallen in love with that kind of work, right? Teaching,
Hmm.
facilitating, coaching teams through that piece. So I knew I loved helping people in that way. What made me fall in love with EOS is probably more so to do with I matched the integrator profile much closer than I matched the visionary profile. So I don't feel this burning desire to have to create or come up with things. I am perfectly at peace to be able to see that this is a 20, 25-year-old proven process that's been proven now 23,000 times with companies working with an implementer to work. And it's been largely unchanged over that time frame. Little tweaks here and there, but largely it's the same thing that Gino created.
Hmm.
I'm good with that. That's great data for me.
Yeah.
So it was already a proven system. And
Mhm.
so it did what I wanted it to do. It helped the people that I wanted to help, and it's been proven.
Mhm.
Seems like a no-brainer to me.
Mhm.
So
Just take it and run with it.
yeah. And I finally had the tools I needed to solve the issues for my own business. So I wouldn't be hitting my head against the wall that I saw my parents and my
Mhm.
brother and my sister hit their head against the wall with.
Awesome. So I know there's a book called EOS Life, and it has a kind of catchphrase. Do you know that off the top of your head?
I do.
I'd like to
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit.
All right.
Can you share those? I think there's 5 things.
Yep, absolutely. So the EOS life is doing what you love with people you love, making a huge difference, being compensated appropriately with time for other passions.
Awesome. So why is that? Why do you like when I first read that, I was like, wow, I'm in. I was already in, but you know, I was just amazed at how clearly that communicated what I wanted out of life. Right.
Hmm.
Maybe tell us what it means to you when you read it.
Well, it actually became cornerstone to my 10-year target. So my 10-year target is to help 100 entrepreneurs live their EOS life while I am living mine
Hmm.
by 2032.
Awesome. So how do you incorporate that into their? I'm just curious because I think EOS, when you implement, you're more talking about the vision of the company.
Hmm.
How do you implement EOS Life in? Because the EOS Life, sorry, it's the why, right? Like I it's the for me, I have to have something that drives me to get up in the morning, right? And for me, a big part of my why is my three boys, right? Is I've got 3 boys, they're 7, 5, and 4. I want to build a business that allows me to do that, that pays me well enough that I can, spend time with them and be present. But something working with people that I love, doing the things that I love. So how do you tie in that I'm just curious with the on the implementation journey. Do you coach people on the visionaries about that or?
I do absolutely because it is my why. I mean,
Hmm.
we're a tight knit community in the Black Hills. South
Hmm.
Dakotans are kind of known for we call it being South Dakota nice, but that's what we hear. So being in the western side of the state, our ag is a huge industry, but
Hmm.
more than that, in the Black Hills at least, is tourism. So we've got a
Hmm.
ton of people that visit our area, and we always hear the same thing. Man, I've never met people so nice as the people that are out here. And I think because of that, we're fiercely loyal to local small businesses here, and hopefully not to a fault. Just had that thought.
Loyalty can lead to a fault for sure. I've experienced that in my life.
Um, but because of that, there's so many owners here that we are tight, and I want to see these people succeed. I mean, the business owners now are the people that I graduated with. They're the people that I was on the playground with when I was in grade school. They've got marriages, and now our kids are getting into the workforce themselves. And I was on a call 3 weeks ago, and I heard one of my fellow implementers describe essentially what we do. We've got the cure for business cancer. And what a shame that would be if we didn't share that. That really touched me, because it's, I don't want to see these people suffer. I don't want to see them not get what they're wanting to out of their businesses. I don't want to see them frustrated and have less success than they could have. So that was really my why. That's the EOS part of the EOS life that speaks to me, is just a quality of life.
Yeah, business is meant to serve you, right, and not enslave you.
Right. The business is supposed to exist because we built them, not we don't exist for the business's sake.
Yeah, I've seen that so many times, and I've seen how EOS can solve that problem. The biggest thing is you have to stay disciplined, right, and just continue consistency, and not get off track, right? And that's why EOS implementers have that quarterly, meeting, and why you need an integrator, right, to keep the consistency and discipline, almost to the point of it's almost too simple, I think, right? I think people overthink it, right? It's like you get bored with the consistency of it, and then be like, like let it go. Like, why did we stop? Like, for example, my current client, they built all their, like a year ago, they built all their processes and systems, and they did a lot of this hard work, and then they grew 70%, and they stopped following the processes and systems, right? So when I came in 4 months ago and started to ask questions and realized, what was going on, a lot of them were like, well, this feels like a lot of change. And I said, well, we're not really changing. We're just going back to what we used to do. Right? Like, yes, we are changing because we got off the tracks, but we just need to go back to the basics and start doing, those things again. Thoughts on that?
I find that it's most things that require discipline are not overly complicated.
No.
They're fairly simplistic, but they do require discipline. So it doesn't mean that they're easy. Just have to be disciplined.
Yeah.
And when I can see that propensity of boredom, because especially for visionaries.
I knew you were going to say that. I was going to say that. In my mind, I was thinking that.
Right? They're an entrepreneur for a reason. They're a visionary for a reason. So when they're in there and they're solving these big problems, and they're creative, and they're starting this thing from nothing, they're alive, and they're feeling all this great stuff. And then so when you fix those things and you start getting a well-oiled machine, I think they almost kind of pause and look around and think, well, what am I here for then?
Yeah.
It's the reason that we say that there's that 90-day, if you've got a visionary and an integrator seat, you've got those 90-day spikes, and then chaos ensues because they get bored, and they've got to figure out a way to, solve another problem.
Yeah. And that's advice that I always give. Like, you better have a creative outlet for that visionary, or like, you better have some rock, or, well, they're not always supposed to have rocks, but you better give them something that they can be excited about or passionate about that will keep them busy. Because if you don't, they'll start, it sounds crazy, but they will start digging into things that they shouldn't and start causing problems. I mean that respectfully. I love visionaries, but I've seen it too many times.
I was talking with a visionary who is working. He's actually sitting in a seat for one of my clients, and he's a visionary himself. And so this is another passion of him. He's helping out a friend that he loves dearly, and that's what his self-reflection, his aha moment was. Oh, I get it. I get why I get into these businesses and I start them, and then all of a sudden they don't work well anymore, and it's because I got bored and I wanted to start doing something differently. So he found his sweet spot as, he starts it, and about the time that he grows something to about 20 employees, that's his threshold. He says that's when I got to exit and I got to start a new company.
I believe that 20 is when it starts to get complex and annoying for a visionary.
Yes.
Maybe even earlier than that, but that's probably capping out. That's the size of the company that I became integrator in. And I remember the visionary saying, Clayton, I'm so bored by this business. Like, this business is so boring. And so he went and bought a different one and fixed it, started fixing it. And I ran the one that he first one.
Did he stay in the visionary seat, or did he go into the owner's box?
No, he stayed in the visionary seat when I was integrator, but he was like very limited, like probably 4 to 6 hours a week. And he pretty much just said, you run this and let me know if you need anything. And I would say most of what he was still doing was the networking and business development side of it, and just sending the estimating department leads, basically. Okay. And then we would meet with the clients and potential clients and price stuff and things like that. But in the other company, he was really probably both visionary and integrator, like a very smart guy, but had to make some hard decisions. The company was almost bankrupt when he bought it. So he bought it and then started making hard decisions to cut staff and change the lease, like break the lease and stuff like that. So, but a challenge and interesting, really required all of him, right, to be able to make it work. But again, once it got stabilized, then it's boring, right? But it's more successful than his first business, which is interesting. So anyway,
the one that you helped him run was the more successful? No,
the new one that he bought is more successful than the one that I was helping him run. But that's because of the COVID. It was a residential construction company. COVID really made residential take off where we are anyway. I think most places, I think that was the story, because people are sitting at home looking at their house and not liking it. They can't travel, so they might as well invest in their house because they're going to be there a lot.
They were visionaries in their own home.
Yeah. Awesome. So any last thoughts about the EOS life, about this journey that you've been on that might add value before we wrap up?
I'm very thankful that I prayerfully considered it, because it was, God answered in powerful ways to let me know that this is truly where he has me, where he intends to have me. And I think that that's why there's so much peace in it, and why it just doesn't feel like work. Yeah, we do hard stuff. We there's 3 boxes of tissues around my session room tables for a reason. But it's not hard, right? When you're following that plan, it's easier. It's more seamless.
Yeah. And I guess my follow-up thought for anyone watching would be, find your sweet spot, right? Like, find your unique ability. If you're running a business and you're struggling, either you're in the wrong business because it's a bad business model or whatever. I've been there. Or you're just trying to do too much, right? And you need to find people and surround yourself with people that can do the things you're not good at. And I think a lot of people just get stuck that I'm the owner, I have to do everything. And it's not a recipe for success. It's a recipe for failure and burnout and ruined
Mhm.
families and, kids that hate you and stuff like that, right? Like just, get the help you need, right? To implement a system like EOS or another system so that you're not struggling the way that
Mhm.
Shasta's parents were and so many others are. So awesome. Well,
Yeah.
if someone wants to learn more about you and what you do, how should they get in touch?
Well, they can go to EOS Worldwide and just click on find an implementer and search for Shasta Mareno, or our particular websites, eosworldwide.com / Shasta Mareno.
Awesome. Great. And so on behalf of our viewers, I just want to thank you for joining us today and sharing your story. It was great. It's interesting to hear the journey, and I can relate so much because of my own experience with um, my parents. And they survived. They've been married for 50 years,
Oh,
and they're pretty much retired now and just renting out the land. But I can relate to seeing the pain, seeing the stress level and all of that. And obviously it's a little different, but I'm sure there's similarities as well.
absolutely.
So if today's interview added value to you, please subscribe to this channel for future interviews with experts in the world of business.